Here we have a GL550. We're doing an oil change today. This is the 4.7 liter twin turbo. This particular engine uses 9 quarts of oil. There's 2 different types of filters here. These are STP, so these part numbers are only really good for this brand. But the differences are the same with any other brand. The one option has a little holder thing on top. You can see it's the same, basically the same filter as the other one. However, the other option, it is missing. It's just normal filter. These are usually labeled a 5-inch and a 3-inch. So we're gonna get started here on the oil change. The first thing you're going to want to do is pop the hood. If you look on the driver's side, right up underneath the dashboard, there is a red lever. Just take your hand, pull that lever down, and that hood will unlatch. You're going to want to then take your hand and reach up underneath this lip. There's a little handle, push up on that, and lift the hood at the same time. And you've got your hood open. Once you have the car jacked up, which you're going to need to because this section underneath actually has to be tilted down in the front a little bit, you'll be able to remove this shielding. This shielding has 8 bolts on it. There's 6 in the front here, and then all the way in the back, there's 2 that are kind of hiding. Once you get all of these 8mm bolts removed, so it's 8mm, I use an extender. You don't need an extender for these guys, but in the back, those 2, it really helps to have that extra length. So once you get those bolts removed, you're going to actually want to tilt the front down, okay? And then it's gonna pull forward. There's a little piece in the back that gets hung up on. All right, now that you've got the skid plate removed, you're gonna wanna shimmy underneath the car and locate the drain plug for the oil, and that is right here. This oil pan kind of sits below a lot of different mechanisms here, the power steering rack, and most of that oil is kind of held up a little bit further. This drain plug is a 13mm, so you're going to want to get a 13mm and make sure you get your drain pan ready and loosen this guy up. And once it's loose, you can kind of get it set up and drain the oil. It really helps, like I mentioned before, to have that fill cap removed. Otherwise, if you have it still on, it creates kind of a vacuum in the engine, and sometimes this engine oil can drain a little bit slower. Also, before you do this, try to run the vehicle for a little bit. Just let it warm up. To have the oil draining cold takes more time. It also leaves a lot of kind of extra oil in the engine. When it's warm, it's a lot more fluid. It allows it to drain through that engine a little bit better. Gets a lot of that a lot more of that old oil out a lot faster too. Now that we have the oil draining, we can go ahead and attack the filter. The filter is on the right-hand side of the engine. In order to take it off, you're going to want to remove this little plastic cover. Just pops up off there. There's just a couple snap clips and a push pin. Under that, you'll find the filter housing. Now, there's a special tool you can put on the top of this. You're going to want to put a socket wrench on it and loosen it up, make sure that you have the right size. You can also use a pair of channel locks if you don't have the actual tool to remove the filter around the traditional kind of tightening one that you would see often. Doesn't really fit in this spot. It's kind of recessed in the top of the engine, but we are just going to use some channel locks today. So we've got the filter cap loose right now, and what we're going to do is going to kind of reach in, try not to drip too much oil. So there's the lid here, and here's the filter. Just be careful when you're pulling it out. It can get awfully messy, so try to keep the drips isolated. And as you can see for this particular engine, we do have that kind of longer extension on the filter. Again, this is the 4.7 liter. This particular one is a 2014. So that's what the filter looks like. So once you have that lid off, you're going to want to remove this O-ring right here. We've got a new one. They usually come with the filter like this. So you buy the filter, you get a new O-ring. That O-ring, to replace it, just take a small screwdriver, put it underneath the bottom of the O-ring, kind of pry it up over, lift it out. And they're pretty easy to come out there. And you got to do with the new one is take that new one, kind of slowly work it around, And just make sure that it looks good, that it's the right size. Sometimes they do get switched up, or maybe it's you know, not the right filter, exactly the right filter. So just make sure that that is a little bit above, you know, above the threads there, and it looks like it'll make a good seal. So let's get it put back together now. You're gonna wanna take that oil filter, insert it with that tip down, not like this. You're gonna insert it tip down. Make sure that it seats into the hole in the bottom there, which I can show you here. There is a hole right in the bottom of the oil filter space, and that's where this little O-ring has to seat properly. So insert that filter all the way down, give it a little push, not too hard. You'll feel it kind of snug into that gap. Then take your cap with the new O-ring, put it on top, and just hand tighten. And then this is 25 Newton-pounds, I believe. Yep, so 25. You're going to torque it down right there. It's actually got the torque spec right on the top of the lid. So if you have that tool I mentioned earlier, you're going to want to put that on the top. You'll be able to take a torque wrench and properly torque this down. If you don't have one handy, you can always use a pair of channel locks. Just be careful you do not over tighten this. Like the one I just removed, that was definitely over tightened, and it would have been much easier with that tool. So just be careful if you are using anything other than a torque wrench that you don't strip these threads out here on the cap, or make it very hard for the next person to change the oil. So let's get that drain plug in and get her filled up. We've got our oil drained out. We've got the new filter in, got this torqued down, drain plug back in. Now we're ready to fill this up with almost 9 quarts of oil. So we're going to start out with a little bit less than 8, and then I'm going to just check the level. And if it looks good, we're going to start it up. Otherwise, I'm going to add a little bit more until I can see it in a good spot on the dipstick. Once it's in a good spot, we're going to start up the car, let it run, let it circulate the oil in the engine, check it again, add more if needed. So let's fill it up.